People of YouTube, it's me, TBG Dion, with
J.R. Iguodaro.
Duncan's Not Nick,
What's it called? Who's 6'2"?
and today we're going to be reading a fan fiction of what? Game Grumps, right? Another one?
NSP, it's a party.
Oh no, Ninja Six Party. Let's just start. I don't even know what to say to this.
Say what's right first.
I'm going to read first.
Yeah, it is.
It's gonna be fun.
I'm doing it in a British voice. It's all about control, Brian. Not in any reasonable way, but it's hardly likely that Brian releases that he's probably most rational adult in any given situation, especially situations including his ex-stoner man-child best friend. What Dan isn't expecting, however, is just how much control he takes in the bedroom. While neither Rachel nor Brian nor the type of kiss and tell, Danny has always imagined their sex life pretty conventional, dependable, logical. So it's a bit of a shock while during one of Brian's visits, Dan finds the two of them home alone one evening. Brian managed to talk to them to his knees without Danny having a full understanding of how he got there. What? He's kneeling down Brian's legs, creeping his hand up his thighs. Brian unzips himself and takes his cock out with one hand and plunges the other one into Danny's hair. What? Firmly guiding his head close up to his up close and personal with Brian's junk.
Ooh.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Woo! Woo! Oh, okay, just take the tip into your mouth, Brian says.
Just a tip.
His voice steady and I can't even talk about this, man. He sounds like he's teaching a fucking class. But Danny does what he's told, sucks slightly. Brian humes quietly in appreciation. A bit harder. Use your tongue. This is a new territory for Dan, and he has to draw back to his own experiences with girls who has been great at sucking dick.
Oh my god.
He points his tongue teasing over a slit of Brian's dick. Brian's fingers clench in the air, and Danny's quite proud of himself. Woo! His hand comes up and wraps around the base of Brian's dick, stroking in the shaft while his mouth works his head. You can make more when you're ready. When you're ready. Is Brian trying to say pencils down after he comes? It's stupid, but Danny can imagine Brian in the classroom. Well, he can imagine Brian in his own high school classroom, but he's not going to waste his time on his fantasy trying to picture the British University lecture halls to look like. Wow. But he can hear Brian drowning down. Brian drowning down the easy musical murmur he keeps when he's explaining shit he doesn't know about. He knows about. Oh my god. And because Danny does not pay attention when Brian is explaining this shit on him, he can only hear the sound, not only with the words, but he can imagine the students watching in various states of rapt attention. And Danny under the desk, all while sucking off the professor. Now there's a visual. Damn. Okay. That's it, you're doing so well, Brian mutters to him, and how fucked up it is that Danny and just glows from the other. This is way too many words, no commas and shit, what the fuck? God damn.
Right?
Straining his eyes upwards so he can watch Brian tilt his head back and moan the tendies down his throat. What?
You want to take it over here?
Go ahead.
Where do you walk out?
Wait.
Reading the paragraph.
Can I?
Right there.
I'll just read it for my
I got a headache.
Do you want to try? And before Brian finishes the sentence, Danny realizes with a jolt that he will try almost literally anything to please Brian. It's an unsettling thought, but on your knees with your bandmate dick in your mouth, it's hardly the place to examine the complicated workings of your own psyche. So he pushes those thoughts away and focuses on Brian's suggestion. Deep throating, Brian wants Danny to deep throat him. Danny's terrified and yet no loss willing to do it. He's never ever had a girlfriend, or even a casual encounter, who didn't balk at a very word, and the one girl who tried it had to stop immediately and spent the next few minutes sluttering and choking. It's hardly an appealing suggestion, at least not from this end. But Brian's hand comes out of the air to cradle his cheek, and when he murmurs, "Would you do that for me, Dan?" Dan's suddenly waiting to take his cock down as far as he can.
Word.
I got that. Oh. Keep reading that.
I'll talk you through it, Brian assures him, because apparently this is a lesson. Brian is fully in professor mode, and that shouldn't be as hot as it is. Open your mouth, wider, relax your tongue and your throat. Dan obeys, Brian's cock weighing hot and heavy on his tongue. Try to dip the back of your tongue, exactly how Brian knows this much detail about
Oh, you didn't tell me
how
it was Kristen Stewart.
Danny's not going to ask. Brian sandwiches Danny's head between his big, firm hands, his fingers entwining in the mess of Danny's hair. As precarious as the situation it is, Dan feels remarkably safe. That's probably a good sign.
Want it over?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I'm on my phone, so like, I guess. Okay. Now I want you to concentrate on keeping your throat and your mouth as wide as possible. And take a deep breath. Don't worry about making it good. Just go with it. You can tap out at any point. 2 fingers against my leg, okay? But do that for me before we start. Dan does, and Brian seems satisfied. He runs over everything Brian told him, and nods for him to start. As Brian figures fly from a board, Brian strains. Danny
Can't even do it.
Danny strains to keep his mouth wide. Why should I keep from back? But the head.
I told you.
I
think he's gonna need this.
I got this. What I leave off? Okay, but the head of Brian is being gently bumps the back of his throat. Oh my god. And Danny
You don't have any wet wipes.
Danny failed his work immediately, his whole head jerking. Brian guides his head back, freeing his mouth, and Danny gasps in pants. His eyes and nose are stinging, but he doesn't feel too bad. He feels accomplished, almost his first hurdle over. He can only improve from now. He swallows, steals himself, and nods again to Brian, who still still has Brian, and then still has Dan on his ass. I read.
Yes, I do. One of you guys get me. I want one of you guys to get me.
Oh, you
Oh my god.
Okay.
This,
Alright,
you
right
can
here?
read too while we're freaking.
Okay.
Alright, you can follow along.
Okay. Right there.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. He goes down again, this time stifling his gag halfway through, taking Brian deeper. He's held there for a moment and Brian doesn't make a noise, but Dan can recognize the hard breath that Brian releases through his nose. Whether or not Danny's any good at it, it's apparently doing the trick. But as Brian guides his head back, he loses it and gags loudly around Brian's cock. Immediately, Brian releases him, his brows knitted together with concern. Danny recovers, clearing his throat.
Oh, this is just too much. Come on, continue.
Read it. Say it.
And has to snake his hand down to his crotch and relieve some of the pressure of his straining hard-on. Are you okay? Brian asks gently. Danny nods for a moment, his eyes shrinking before he regains enough composure to answer him. I'm fine. Did I do it wrong? I'm not supposed to gag like that, am I? It wasn't wrong. Just probably not very comfortable, Brian reassures. But is it okay for me to make those sounds, Danny asks? Brian frowns again. Do you want to? Dan laughs shakily, rubbing his dick through his jeans. It was kind of hot. Kind of gross, but in a good way. He's too aroused. Too far gone his headspace, and Brian's obedient there toward the center of his words, as much as he may regret them later. Filthy, Brian agrees quietly, and wow, Danny has apparently hit something for Brian, because his eyes are dark and intense. Apparently, it's doing to Brian what it's doing to Dan, probably more so, and he's the one getting his dick sucked. Danny shuffles forward on his knees with more control of his movements now that he's up closer and guides Brian's cock into his mouth again. It apparently takes Brian by surprise as he gasps and flies his hands into Danny's hair again. This time, Danny concentrates, and when his throat starts to constrict, he goes with it, recovering himself without falling off. He thrusts his head forward. not giving his gag reflex time to adjust before he starts fucking himself down into Brian's dick.
Oh.
The noises he's making is absolutely disgusting, wet and graphic, and Brian's hands are tightening in his hair. When he pulls back for air, Brian's eyes are wild, reflecting Danny's own expression back to him, and his chin is wet with saliva. Grumps egg, collecting on his fingers as he undoes his jeans with the other hand, ripping open his pockets. He wraps his wet hand around his cock and starts to jerk himself, starting down to Brian. Do it, he says, ducking his head down towards Brian's cock. Fuck my mouth! And boy, it wasn't the last thing Dan Avedon would expect himself to say.
There's no more.
Oh, okay.
You want to take it from there?
I got you.
Oh my god.
Oh my
Brian repositions his hands until he has Danny's hair bunched in either fist and total control of his head. Then he pulls him forward until his cock is down Dan's throat and his nose is flush with Brian's belly. Dan chokes, his throat constricted around the invasion, but Brian holds him there. Long seconds pass, Danny becoming lightheaded as air begins to run out. He's stroking his dick furiously and moaning vibrations into Brian's skin between his hard gags. When Brian releases him, he almost feels dazed and gasps in a huge breath before he's down again. Brian fucks him into with no steady rhythm, like he's jacking off with Dan's head. He feels so used and he loves that. Loves that focus is off Brian getting off and Dan has to jerk his own dick if he wants anything. He can hear the wet, fleshy sound of Brian's cock hitting his throat.
Fleshy!
The step from both of them as Brian's thrusts get more brutal. From Danny's first time deep throwing, he feels like he got the hang of it pretty quickly. Although his findings are arguably limited, keeping his mouth open while he chokes and gags on the end of a dick. He muses that while it's not exactly difficult, it would certainly be unpleasant if he wasn't so fucking turned on by it.
I'm gonna cry.
Finally, Brian wrenches Danny's head back with a sound so hoarse and animalistic that Dan's hips give a little jolt. On your face or in your mouth, Brian asks gruffly, and it takes Dan a moment to realize what he means. Fuck. He can barely concentrate. He's so close to himself, and Brian's frantically fisting his own dick right at Danny's eye level. My face, Dan stutters out, because he always liked that in porn, and because girlfriends rarely do it for them, and he wants Brian to be pleased with them. Come on, my face, Brian, please. Brian's teeth grit them, his lips pointing it back with a snarl as he comes, and Danny shuts his eyes as he feels the first splash across his cheek. Brian is groaning as he paints Danny's face, and it's such a great sound, sharp and musical, like everything he does. Finally,
Musical.
Brian's cock nudges at Danny's lips. The man himself reduced to shallow little pants. It's only then that Danny notices that his fist is weighing his own release, still gripping himself. He opens his eyes carefully as there's a rope of cum clinging to his eyelash, and Brian stares at him as Dan takes just the head of his dick in it again. They're back at the beginning. Danny sucking lightly as his tongue cleans and quickly wipes, chasing the bitter taste of Brian's orgasm.
No.
Shit, Dan! And Dan can't help but laugh, pulling Brian's dick out of his mouth as he grins. I think it kind of rocked your world, huh, Brian? Brian says nothing for a moment before his lips quirk into a weary smirk.
Kid's almost dead.
And you're seriously telling me you've never sucked dick before? I knew it was bullshit.
Word.
Honest to God, I'm just a natural. Dan protested, holding his sticky hand up in defense. Bullshit. I wouldn't be so dismissive of my natural talent if I were you, Danny observes. That was my first time. Imagine how fantastic at dick sucking it would be, albeit with a little practice.
Alright guys, that's it for that fanfiction.
I gotta stop with you guys with this shit. I swear.
This one, hey,
It was my idea.
all your idea.
I know, but I'm saying this is getting way too.
And I did comment on the video, like I said, it's been a lot worse than I'm here, and I was right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do all the gay ones though,
Yeah.
man.
And I'm sorry.
Gay girls?
I'm
No,
sorry.
This sex money, man. You're hurting my YouTube feelings,
I'm
man.
sorry.
What
I
are
wonder
you
if-
doing?
I'm never gonna meet these guys at Comic Con thanks to you.
Yeah, I read some facts about you, and I'm sorry.
I feel so dirty just
Yo,
reading this.
is it like Dashy fanfiction?
No, don't you dare! Don't you
No.
dare! Don't you dare! Don't, no,
boy.
because Dashy knows me, because I messaged him once.
Dashy doesn't know
Dude,
you.
he knows
He knows
Black
of you.
guy.
There's
No.
a difference. He knows
So-
of
He noticed
he-
you. He doesn't
noticed
know you.
So I said me too on Twitter.
Yeah, not Twitter, Facebook and Twitter.
Well,
Baby.
this one.
Okay, then that's it for today.
Alright, we realize this video's gone like towards 15 minutes, so
I got a
we'll wrap
haircut.
it up.
But,
No one cares.
Later.
Have a good day.